Okay, I want to walk through two scenarios. One is a turnkey that doesn't have a third unit added. It's just buy the turnkey duplex, hold it for 10, 15 years versus buy a turnkey duplex that is already converted into the 2 units, and then, but with a larger lot and ADU potential. And what are the pros and cons, and what does it look like to compare these two scenarios side by side? So I'll walk through the concept first and then the financials second to give that side by side comparison. Okay, so in concept, let me just shrink me down a little bit. In concept, and this is, I think, abundantly clear through the legislation that's passed over the last few years, is that density is the mandate. They're putting density in the control of the everyday investor, and they're waiving development fees in doing so. And that's what second suites were in the up-down splits, typically up-down. They could be front-back, but most often up-down. And then with the introduction of Bill 23 and third and fourth units, it's the exact same logic. What does that give us? It gives us the benefit of being able to see the trend of second suites over the last 10 years and probably what ADUs are going to do over the next 10 years. So essentially last 10 years of second suites, next is going to be ADUs. Second suites, yes, but ADUs will be the real kind of upside. ADUs are not new. They're about a year into the market, but they're not highly adopted. And so that's really important. I say they're a year into the market. They're actually much older than that, but the legislation is more recent. And so what does that give us? It gives us the ability to see what did early adopters face, pros and cons of second suites, mid versus late adopters, and then you can pick. And so what I'm proposing here is a hybrid model where buy a turnkey duplex, hang on to it for 3-4 years, something in that time frame, refinance it at that point, and use the refinancing capital to fund the ADU. You reduce your capital, you get a bunch of benefits from this. So what are the benefits of doing this? So first of all, let's go through these. Phase one, you either BRRRR it or you buy a turnkey. In today's market, I wouldn't BRRRR it. I would buy the turnkey. Wait, roughly 3 years, refinance, use that capital to help fund the third unit. What are the benefits of this? There's less capital now. You can buy the turnkey duplex for very low capital. Wait until the process is well established. So when we extrapolate and leverage knowledge from what does the trend look like of early versus mid versus late adopters of second suites, early adopters, yes, you can buy up those properties cheaper. They got more and more expensive as more and more investors learned what the potential was, to the point where they got quite lean. And then Bill 23 got introduced, and now there's a whole new wave of opportunity in these things. But as early adopters, pros and cons. Pros, inventory was higher, prices were cheaper. Cons, appraisals were tougher because the appraisers didn't know the value of the second suites. We had to do a lot of work in order to the burden of proof was high. And the lenders weren't as accustomed to it. And so what do we get through this hybrid model of buying a turnkey and then adding the third unit later? The lenders, the appraisers will be used to it, but we get the benefit of purchasing while the market still doesn't see the massive upside of larger lots with bigger parking and more ADU potential. That will come, I believe. But today it's not well understood in the market. Only a few understand. So lock up the land now while it's cheap. And have the duplex investment, future refi, fund some or all the ADU. So you get this scenario where you can buy at today's discounted prices. You can buy in today's environment where the land value isn't as well understood as it will be soon. You can reduce your capital now. You can reduce your capital when you build the ADU through the refi. And you can defer the ADU till the city and municipalities have their process more ironed out. It's more well understood from the appraisers and from the lenders and from the city standpoint. There's just a lot of benefits to this hybrid model. So what do the financials look like? So this is showing a purchase price of roughly $590. In this case, I've got rentals of $15,000, although that's modifiable, and I'll show you that in a minute. So over here we have turnkey with an ADU potentially added in roughly 3 years, and a turnkey with no ADU added. And so capital to purchase the turnkey duplex is roughly the same. It's like actually exactly the same, $151,000. That's with down payment, closing costs, and reserve fund built in, and this renovation in this case. And then this extra spike in capital when you're adding the ADU is we refinance here, we fund part of the ADU, but we top it up. So 150, we're looking at roughly 180 of extra capital and a 250 ADU build with the other capital supplied through the refi. So you save a little bit of money there, roughly 70K in the refi. Comes into the ADU, you top it up with the other 180, then you refi. You're able to pull out most of that ADU capital, and then roughly 5 years later, you refinance again. You get all of your capital back and then some. Versus capital outlay by year, we start at 151, we refi in about 5 years, we get almost all of our capital back, and then we get it all back in 10 years. So that's the difference in the capital outlay. There is some more capital, and it's tied up for a little bit longer. However, the gross potential profit, if sold by year, in roughly 10 years, you're looking at 728, and roughly 10 years, you're looking at 549. Monthly cash flow in 10 years, you're sitting at about 3,600. In 10 years, you're sitting at about 2,400. Now, there's some assumptions built in there. And this is with 1 unit added. If you add 4 units, obviously the payoff gets deferred, but the payoff is bigger. That's the trend here. And so, it's not a clear-cut case. There's more potential, no question, by buying the land. So what if you just purchased, but you didn't exercise the ADU? Well, if you follow this path and you decide not to do the ADU, that is your prerogative. You still get all of the benefits of this. You also get the benefit of, as the land value gets understood and ADUs become more and more pervasive in investors' eyes, that property that you purchased that has the ADU potential but you didn't actually exercise on will be worth more and more and more over time, even if you don't do that reno. So there's a lot of upside potential. Lastly, let me highlight this. This 15K in renos can be distracting at times. Let's look at what happens if we increase that or eliminate it, just to see what that looks like in terms of the overall investment. So look at our gross profit, look at our cash flow over time. If we have a 0 investment, our capital drops a little bit to 136. The payoff time frame is a little bit quicker. If you don't add the ADU, you get it back in 5 years versus almost all of them in 5 years. And the payback on the ADU side is identical. If you say it's going to be 20,000, again, not a lot changes in terms of the gross value and the cash flow. It's really just when the capital gets returned. And so, the real kind of, the goal of these things, income replacement and long-term wealth building, it's not that the capital to do the rentals is irrelevant, but when you look at it in a more strategic, longer-term view, it becomes more of just a detail than is this a good investment for me or a bad investment? That's really the point of looking through this lens. So if we put this back again to roughly 15,000, let's say, let's look at 10,000. So you're still seeing the same cash flow, the same gross profit in a 10-year time frame, and you got slightly higher capital outlay, but that's the lens that you want to look through in these longer-term investments. In 5 or 10 years, what's my potential? Will I be happy that I own this asset? Is there real upside? Is this worth it for me to run this side business and do this investment?